Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. This is a dedicated podcast to helping individuals own and operate successful bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses. It's here that we hear from the experts and discuss things that are relative to you offering quality accounting services and getting paid what you're worth. Now, as it relates to the show, each and every week we have on experts to actually share these various insights, and today is going to be a wonderful example of that. Today, I have Jeff Lenning. He is a Microsoft MVP, certified trainer and Excel expert, passionate about dedicating his services to accelerating your Excel skills. Now, he's actually the one who founded Excel University. It's a revolutionary force in the intersection of accounting and technology, starting first at Arthur Andersen in the audit division. Lenning's career unfolded through Gateway Computers and Click Consulting, Inc., but after that, he created and founded Excel University, where his passion for Excel and technology innovation have converged. So, Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Roger. Happy to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be a wonderful conversation. If I could just speak for all my listeners, I think Excel is definitely one of those tools that we have, if not used now, we were using for a period of time. So we're going to get into a little bit of the nuances of all this, and I think it's very appropriate. But I want to get a little bit of a backstory first of you. So give me an idea of how you, first of all, got into accounting.
Yeah. So, sorry, I thought we were going to say, how'd you get into teaching Excel, not accounting? But
no, accounting. Let's start there. Why accounting of all things?
Yeah. So my father is an accountant, CPA, has a traditional tax practice. And so that's where I really started to kind of catch an interest for that. And then when I was at University of Southern California, my roommate was like, "Hey, Jeff, we should join the accounting society." I'm like,
of
no,
course. Natural thing to do. That's what the girls are, right?
Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, no. He's like, well, they have free pizza. I'm like, okay, sounds good. And so that's what introduced me to the big, 6 or 8 or 4, whatever. And so then I went to Arthur Andersen right out of college.
Natural trajectory. I mean, that just makes sense. The college roommate, hey, let's go to a pizza party. You end up joining the club, and later on you find out that you're an accountant. I mean, it's just the natural evolution of things. So you get into accounting, you graduate. How did you get into now the Excel University? Give me that evolution.
Yeah. So basically, for me, in my personal life and my work life, it's always this behind the scenes desire for efficiency in all things. It's all about efficiency, getting my stuff done faster than other people, getting my stuff done just faster in general, to save time. So that's kind of like the genesis of all of it. And so when I was the accounting manager at a public biotech company, the weekly or the monthly close process, so the financial statements, journal entries, all that stuff, as the accounting manager, that was I was responsible for that. That was like a 2-week process every month.
Uh-huh.
And so what I really started to figure out was, hey, I'm working late nights, I'm working weekends, I'm kind of stressed at work, I'm cranky, I come home grouchy, like what? And so I started focusing on delegating my manual steps, not to other people, but directly to Excel. And that was like the breakthrough. It was like, hey, wait, Excel is really like this always on employee. And so I just started focusing on that. And so after the course of, 6, 12 months, that monthly close didn't take 2 weeks. It took like 2 days because of really Excel and the automation there. So then I was like, oh my goodness, I need to tell people about this. And so I wrote an article for the Journal of Accountancy, emailed it to the editor. He's like, this is great, let's publish it. And so I knew I was onto something. So I really just started trying to teach other people to do what I did. So it was a span of hundreds of live sessions all over the country through the AICPA and other state societies and other CPE providers, to then going and creating the pre-recorded lesson videos and making it more on-demand self-service. So that's kind of the genesis of all of that.
I love it. Although, one of these things that's kind of interesting, I'm going to date myself real quickly here. Before Excel, I remember Lotus 1-2-3. So it's just one of those things where, you get into these spreadsheets, you start having fun with it. And what's interesting to me is I've gone to classes and learned how to actually use Excel a little bit more proficiently. And I've always come away learning something new. But what's astounding to me is, even as good as I feel I am, I go to another place, see somebody else do another trick. I'm just enamored with, wow, the platform is so capable. It clearly has its purpose and its place, but we're going to dive into a few of the things that you obviously feel are applicable. But as amazing as the software is, is it still relevant today? You've got a lot of obviously more dedicated software programs that are more intentional. I mean, clearly we're not supposed to be using Excel for accounting software now. So what's its application? Where do you find its benefit?
Yeah. So I think when there's an application that does exactly what you want it to do, great, let's go with that. Like, we don't have to force everything into Excel, but there's so many gaps. And so it seems like data ends up in Excel. If I want to do a budget versus actual, well, my actual data is coming from my accounting system. Maybe it's QuickBooks or something else. My budget data might be somewhere else. So like, I can't run a budget versus actual from either of those platforms. So I end up importing it to Excel. And so that's kind of like the Swiss Army knife of handling everything for which there's not a dedicated piece of software.
It's funny because what you just described is, okay, can I do a CSV file? I mean, that's the end of the day. Okay, can I take where it resides and can I
Yes.
pull it out and work with it in Excel? And that's a very common thing. It's one of my natural questions is, can I export this as a CSV file and then begin manipulating and working with the data? That's where you start to get a greater good or value of pivot tables and just a variety of if-then statements and conditional statements. So yeah, there's a lot to be said here. So let me kind of narrow this down. If you had to narrow down Excel into top features, what people should know and understand to save time, to save money, what would those be?
So Excel is a big place. So let's just acknowledge that. And you said it before. So Excel is like a big place. If I were to say, what are like the top 3 features within Excel that have the potential to save the most amount of time more than anything else, it's going to be Power Query, Power Pivot, and Pivot Tables. And these 3 things are large features, so they're going to take some time to understand how they work. But just to break down what they each do or what the purposes are, Power Query is designed to help you get data from external places, clean it up on its way into Excel so that by the time that it arrives to your workbook, it's cleaned up and ready to use in a repeatable manner. So we just click refresh.
Okay.
So it replaces this whole download a file, open it up, copy. Hopefully I got all the rows, paste it into my workbook. Hopefully I didn't replace any data that I need. And then let me delete columns, delete rows, change and do the transformations. So Power Query automates that whole entire process.
Love it.
And then pivot tables and Power Pivot are more on the, how do I summarize this data in an automated manner? So once I've got the data in from my budget and my accounting system, how do I create a report that's refreshable? So the beauty of these 3 features is they're designed to be refreshable, meaning I do that setup once, and then every subsequent period, it's just a matter of hitting the refresh button. And that's how we can really use Excel to save time.
I've experienced each of these. Definitely the Power Query, going out there and getting the data updated. I've got it once. Okay, how do I get the now new current data? And then, as you were pointing out, it's then now how do I take the data I've got and kind of manipulate it, understand it, like the pivot table that you mentioned. So I'm curious. AI comes on the scene. What impact is AI having on the productivity as it relates to Excel?
Yeah, it's improving it. So to be clear, I've used ChatGPT, I've used Microsoft's version, which is Copilot built into Excel. And I think what they're really good at is helping me with a very narrow and specific task. Like, I open up this workbook that someone else wrote this formula for, and I'm trying to maintain it, and I don't understand what all these functions or what these formulas are doing. So I can ask AI, explain this formula to me, and it'll break down every function argument, every cell reference. So for learning, it's really insane. What it's not as good about right now is here's this general learning path of the things that you should know. And so it's like bigger picture, setting up like a dedicated learning path. And so that's hopefully that's the job that I do. And I still will have it for at least a period of time till I retire. But yeah.
So I'm curious. I've got Excel. I'm using it. I'm familiar with it. I've used it for years. What's the difference between Excel and Google Sheets?
So there's a lot of similarities. I use both every day. I love both products, and I think they're both amazing. The good news is that the functions that Microsoft have developed, so sum, subtotal, filter, like all these functions, they all are supported in Google Sheets. So if you learn skills in Excel and the functions, they translate right to Google Sheets. Now, there's some areas where Google Sheets have things that Microsoft doesn't have, and Excel has things that Google Sheets doesn't have. But for the large group of users, both can be very, very effective for productivity.
Very good. I appreciate the fact that there's kind of like this language, if you will, as it relates to functions. We're going to use the term universal right here. Universal in the two different app platforms. So I like that. All right. So here's the thing that I wanted to understand next. You're an accountant by profession, by trade. What are some of the traditional uses of Excel as an accountant would use them? Meaning on a monthly or weekly basis, what are some of the great ways to leverage Excel in the work that we're doing?
Okay, so the beauty for our industry as accountants, I'm a CPA, I'm still active, I still get my CPE credits, is that a lot of the things that we do are recurring in nature. We update this every day, week, month, quarter, year. That's why it's such a powerful tool for us specifically to understand, is because a lot of the work is recurring, which means if you're able to set up the formulas, the pivot tables, the power queries to automate it, then every update becomes a simple refresh instead of now I have to go build my journal entries for this month. Now I have to go create my variance report for each department. Now I have to go do my payroll summaries and upload it into my payroll program. Now I have to create the balance sheet, the P&L, and all these things. So I've used Excel as my role as an accounting manager to close the book and produce financials, as a tax accountant, and as an auditor. So it's really relevant in all of these areas.
I'm going to be very honest here. You are getting me giddy about what it is I'm missing in the work that I do on a monthly basis as it relates to running the business. There are so many things that I currently use on a monthly basis to analyze how we're doing within the company. And it does involve some Excel sheets and it does involve some Google Sheets. But the point is I'm realizing that there are some definite things that I could leverage more than I'm currently today, simply because of some of the comments you've already shared. So I'm excited to kind of reassess as I'm doing my reports, what more could I be doing with these? One, just to leverage the functionality of the report, but two, can I make it more visual? So that's where I want to go next. Obviously, Excel has the great capacity to kind of compile this data, compress the data, give us some actionable information, but there's a visual element to it. I'm a visual person. I like graphs and charts. Can you talk to, how can you use Excel to now illustrate all these types of results?
Wonderful. So Excel has a very sophisticated built-in charting system. And there's like traditional charts where you point it to a range of data.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are pivot charts, which get their aggregate values from pivot tables. And so both of these are very useful in creating these types of charts and graphs and to visualize the data. Now, here's the thing. When you go into Excel and you create a chart or a pivot chart, oftentimes the default color scheme and the default captions and things are not in line with best practices. So I take my cues from Stephen Few, and he's a data visualization expert. I've read almost all of his books. And so he really provides the guidance for how do we make these charts, what should they look like? How should we design them to be as effective as possible? Remove all the chart junk, colors and all of these things. And so in my Master's 1 class where I teach Power Query, Power Pivot, and Pivot Tables, I use his, and I talked to him about this, is it okay if I use these? Yes. So I use his design standards to teach how do we visualize this data and present it to others.
I'm grateful that we're having this conversation because I truly believe, and people who know me and listen to me regularly will understand when I say that as an accounting profession, our role is to be the translator, the interpreter of the data. And so we're doing a great job using Excel or whatever other platform to now collect, compile, and organize this data. But until we can actually present it to, let's say, the business owner in an effective way, a compelling way, I think they lack the ability to make informed business decisions. So I think it's this step that's so essential to say, okay, that's great that you've pulled all this data together and compiled it and got some great results. But until you can illustrate it and present it in a way that's useful, and I'm again a visual person, I think then it's not really as compelling as it can be. And so this is where I think that big lift comes from all this work that we've now done. So as it relates to this, I'm curious, what are some of the efficiency gains that someone can basically expect or should anticipate getting some additional learning as it relates to Excel?
Yeah. So in terms of the efficiency gains, okay.
Yes,
So
efficiency
basically,
gains.
yeah, efficiency gains. By the way, just to go back, I want to come back to efficiency gains, but just to go back to
Okay.
the chart design,
Yeah.
I always felt like that was a weakness of mine. Like I was good at Excel. I know how to do the formulas. I can create a table-based tabular report for someone. But when it came to charting, I didn't know what graph type to use, line, bar, like pie, what,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I didn't know how to. So his instruction was very informative for how to make those be as effective as possible. So highly recommend that. And we could put the link to his his books in the show notes. But
Well, hold
going
on.
back,
Before we leave there, I think that's very important because there's a proper time to use, let's say, a bar graph versus a line graph versus a pie chart. And
yes.
unless you understand what those charts are meant to convey, you may be misusing the chart. And that's the point. So, do you incorporate, let's say, trend lines? Do you actually use comparative analysis as it relates to the different charts, like bar graphs? You can show things that, like I said, the pie chart may not be able to communicate. So the thing that you just shared is hugely important as to understanding not just to use a visual, but which visual to use.
Yes, because it depends on the type of relationship within the numbers you're trying to feature.
Mhm.
So I go through all that. I just basically asked permission to use his concepts. And so he's very gracious. Anyway, so that's where I learned all of those things. And I would recommend that for anyone who's in the business of communicating financial or numerical data to other people.
Very good. All right, so let's talk about the efficiency things then.
Okay, so the efficiency gains are directly proportional to how much time you are spending in Excel and the type of reports you're building in Excel. So, for example, if I'm commonly creating a one-time use workbook, right, and I'm going to create it once and I'm never going to open it or update it, I can save you, or my training can save you a little time because I'll help you be more familiar with which functions would be most appropriate and how to approach it and basic workbook, layouts and design and things like that. But if you're opening Excel daily and you find that a lot of the things that you're doing, you do every day, week, month, quarter, year, those are the people that I can help the most because their efficiency could potentially go down to 10% of the time that it takes. Like that is not uncommon because we end up rebuilding these reports every time instead of just building them so we can just refresh. And so just think about that. If I copy, paste, clean up, create a pivot table, summarize it, as opposed to just hitting refresh. So you can just imagine that it's a huge time savings.
Oh yes, no, this whole refresh idea of doing the pull here is very, very important. I'm actually considering some things that I can do for that. All
Good.
right, so here's my next thing. I really do feel that Excel is powerful, but are there any complementary type tools that you feel are worth recommending that are good companions to Excel that we may not be considering right now?
Yeah, so Power BI comes to mind. And let me just kind of break that down briefly. If you take Power Query and its ability to get external data, clean it up, and present it in a tabular format, and then you combine the power of Power Pivot and pivot tables, or pivot charts rather,
Mhm.
and if that's your only workflow, you could use Power BI instead of Excel because the same underlying core technology is built into the desktop Power BI version. And so that is such a common workflow that if you can imagine, they actually built a separate standalone product to handle that workflow because it's so common. And then depending on the license, you could easily share those reports to other people. And so a lot of times we'll get the data, we'll create the reports, and then the last step is to then deliver those reports to others. And so what does that look like? Well, generally that's kind of a manual process, or maybe we could create a macro to automate that. But with Power BI, they have that whole report distribution system like built right in. So I would, if that kind of sounds like your workflow and your report distributions, definitely worth a look.
I like it. No, I appreciate the recommendation. So, what are some of the common mistakes you find that typical Excel users make? I'm hoping I'm not going to do any that you mentioned, so I'm listening.
Yeah, so I think a couple of things from accuracy and efficiency. Okay, so I'm always thinking about improving accuracy and efficiency. So from an accuracy standpoint, do you know how when you have a workbook and let's just keep it simple, you have a P&L, you have a cash flow, you have a balance sheet, okay?
Okay.
What are the things you actually look for? Well, you go, hey, is cash out over here? Does it tie out to cash over here? And hey, is the net income over here equal to the net income over here? Like you're doing these internal consistency checks, right? So what we can do is just set up a standalone, and I teach this in my training, but a standalone error check worksheet, which looks for all of these things. So it's looking to make sure that all the data on the data sheet flows into the report. You know, maybe we forgot to click refresh. So how are we going to catch that? So you're always asking, like, how can I have Excel point out if I forgot to update or do something or correct a formula? So I set up a standalone dedicated error check worksheet. So before we print and distribute the reports, we just glance, everything is green with conditional formatting, all systems are go. All right, let's rock and roll. So that's kind of from
Like
the
it.
accuracy. Yeah.
All right, I like it. I've got something similar. I can't say I do exactly that, but I do have something similar that I use as a check before I send off the report. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, and then from a just kind of a efficiency standpoint, there are what I'm going to call an input cell, and that's just a cell where I have to type in some number. Like I want this report to go from January 1st to January 31st. So I type in both dates.
Okay.
And so we end up getting lazy and not figuring out the formula to replace those input cells. So we can't replace all input cells with formulas, but to the extent we can, it means there's one less cell that we have to update every month. And so this kind of thinking of how do I eliminate each and every input cell and every manual step for that matter is what's going to really lead to efficiency. So in that from and to date scenario, I could go 1/1, January 1st, and I could use the EO month function to calculate January 31st. And if I type in February 1st, it's going to calculate the 28th or 29th, depending on leap year. So that's just a simple example of this idea of converting manual input cells to formula cells, because everything we can delegate to Excel will save us time.
You know, it's funny. I've done something similar to that, but I'm realizing I've got a report where I've been lazy and I have not done that. So, okay, that's a good reminder. The next question I have for you is in the training. I've realized, you know, I'm pretty decent with Excel, but I've realized that there's always something new I'm learning if I pay attention to someone working in Excel, like when they share their screen and I'm watching them make some manipulations. It's like, oh, I didn't even realize you could do that. So the point is what are some of the common ahas that an expert who uses Excel regularly may come in and go, oh my heavens, I've been using this for 10 years and I never knew that. What are some that stand out in your mind as people just volunteer? I've been using it forever and I didn't know it could do that.
Yeah, so I would say it's probably some of the new-ish features which catch people off guard because, you know, coming up in audit, our standard approach was the dilly method, right? Do it like last year. You know what I mean? And so I just update this workbook the same way I've been doing it over and over again. And maybe my manager set it up, maybe my manager's manager. And so that's just the way we've been doing it without paying attention to what are the new things that are coming out in Excel, like the filter function, like Power Query, like tables. Tables are low-hanging fruit that really enhance your productivity. So that's kind of what I think about that.
I appreciate that because you're right. There's a number of Excel reports that I didn't originally create them. They're not my creation, yet I use them. And it'd be nice for me to actually pause for a moment and go back through and see, is there anything new or I'm familiar with that I could actually complement the report with that would enhance what it's currently doing simply because I wasn't the originator. So that's a good point. All right. So what's a common mistake that you see typical Excel users make in their workbooks?
Yeah. I would say just not focusing on the error checks and not focusing on eliminating all the manual steps, having side calculations. So in other words, the overall layout is also important. So we end up creating side calculations instead of just setting up a new worksheet to calculate, and keeping things organized. And so when I come in to update it, it's just like it's a mess. I don't know what I'm doing. So not having an instructions or how to update, start here worksheet, which is the first worksheet in any one of my workbooks, and just kind of lays out the update steps. So even things like having a purpose statement at the top of everything. So it's just kind of little things like that. But in aggregate, they can be helpful.
So I'm going to share with you just something that happened at a recent conference I attended. I'm going to share this because I'm expecting that this might trigger something for you, and I'm hoping it will actually cause you to think of something. As much as I use Excel and others that I know, I was sitting down with a gentleman at a conference, and he was just sharing on his computer some of the things that he has actually built as workflows and different things as shortcuts. And the gentleman, Rob, he was incredibly functional within Excel and some of the other platforms as he integrated Outlook and Word. And he was just leveraging Microsoft to a level I had never seen before. And so as he was sharing with me all these things, I was just impressed with the lack of knowledge I had of the tool. And what I'm trying to get to is the fact that you're an expert. You use this all the time. You're in a position where you're educating a lot of people, typically as to things that they're not familiar with. But when was the recent time that you may recall where you were impressed by someone else and their use of Excel?
Yeah. So I have a lot of Excel friends.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And a lot of them are MVPs like myself. And so I keep an eye on things that they talk about, or YouTube videos that they release, or blog posts that they release.
Yeah.
And and I'm like almost on a weekly basis impressed by something that they say. I'm like, I never knew we could
Yeah.
do that. And then I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I open up my Excel and test it out. I'm like, wow. So I'm always learning new and cool things in Excel. It's a big place.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was watching Rob actually do these different things. He was just kind of sharing with me his workflow and so forth. I got giddy. I was like, that's powerful. That's incredible. Look at the time that he put into simplifying something that would take, 15 minutes to do. And he's got it now to where it's automated and it's a click of a button. It was just fascinating to see how he was leveraging the software to do something that honestly, you can do it, but you didn't realize you could do it so much quicker and more efficiently until you sat down and he was figuring all these things out. All right. So here's something that I'd like to know. You've been doing this for years. You've actually been now teaching classes and offering assistance to individuals to help them leverage this. Why, as a seasoned accounting professional, should we actually now help the younger generation see value in Excel where they may not be seeing the need for it? They may just assume that they're just going to use some of these, let's say, general ledger type applications, get into QuickBooks, I'll just learn it. Why should we be helping them realize the value of, say, Excel?
Yeah, that is a really important point. I have many college professors who have talked to me, and they've said, when I send my kids, these are accounting class professors,
Mm-hmm.
when I send my kids out to get their first job and I talk to these employers, they're always surprised at the lack of Excel skills. We do not equip them well enough in Excel. And so many of them have their students take my class and go through my class. And they're like, the difference is so amazing. When they're interviewing, they're so much more confident and so much more likely to get the job because they stand out amongst their peers. And then when they're actually employed, they have way better opportunities because their employers trust they know what they're doing and can see their work and give them better opportunities, and they really stand out amongst their peers. So I think that equipping young people with Excel skills is extremely beneficial for their not only getting their first job, but then also getting great evaluations and getting great raises as time goes on. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that because I agree. One of the things that I feel that this is it's an essential tool. And because it's an essential tool, sometimes people just overlook it because they assume that it's antiquated. Oh, that's just, yeah, we're so beyond that now. It's almost as if you're going back to a 10 key calculator and you're trying to 10 key in things. I remember when I was doing that, and this was back in my late teens. I had to every night enter in the Z tape and actually do checks, and we would record those for the deposit. And I had to go in and do the calculations, and you get really efficient as you're one handing the 10 key calculator and doing all the calculations. Well, these are just skills that some people might consider to be antiquated, but in reality, they could prove to be very beneficial in certain settings, and yet they're not taught any longer. And that's one of the things that I think is quite disappointing. All right. So, with regards to time, I want to get into more or less what it is you have found in this transition of now the Excel University. Tell me a little bit about the school itself.
Yeah, so the school is, we're NASBA CPE sponsor, so our courses are offered for CPE credit. They are provided as a resource where you'd log in and you'd train at your own pace, roll the videos, pause, rewind, replay, change playback speed, so you'd watch the lesson videos. And then I provide hands-on exercises like homework so that you can actually practice the skills that I teach in the lesson video, because honestly, it's easy to watch a video and go, oh yeah, I got that. But then when you're asked to actually do the formula, that's where the learning really happens. So there's exercises for every one of my lessons. There's quizzes, there's exams, all according to the NASBA, feedback and all their parameters and standards. And then there's certificates of completion. Plus, there's lots of additional resources so that students can kind of choose their own adventure. Some folks just want to stay high level, and some people are like, hey, that's really applicable. Let me dig in deeper. So I provide a wealth of additional resources. And then there's live office hours with me over Zoom so that people can ask, hey, Jeff, in this lesson, can you clarify this? Or, hey, Jeff, let me share my workbook. What do you think about how I should approach this? And what's going on with this X lookup function? So I can actually provide the support that students need. So that's kind of the way that I format the classes.
I love it. As a post-secondary school, Universal Accounting Center is very committed to offering quality training, and to see that you're likewise producing that type of training as it relates to Excel is very, very important. One of the things I'm going to add to our listeners and kind of help put this into context is the fact that I feel that as accounting professionals, we do oftentimes still use Excel, but too often as we own and operate our businesses, we get removed from that day-to-day interactions with Excel. At least I am. I have other individuals that are producing the reports and generating the information. But I think too often we know that there's a quicker and easier way to actually do this, but they aren't that skilled or trained. And so I think, one, we need to be actually investing a little bit more in them, because the more training they have, the more efficient they'll be producing these reports. I'm assuming that just like I did when I was new and unfamiliar with the platform, I was winging it. I was trying to do things with it when there were clearly more efficient ways of doing it. I remember when I learned pivot tables, of all things, pivot tables, that was a game changer for me, because I had the data in front of me. I was looking at the data, but I was trying to figure out, how do I now pull out of the information what I need to know? Pivot table was a game changer. And so it's just these learnings that unfortunately I think a lot of people just don't have, because it's kind of when I need it, I'll figure it out, I'll YouTube it. And that's just not the answer, in my opinion, of these types of situations. So efficiency is a big part of what I feel as owners we need to be giving our people the ability to do through training. And then the second thing I'd add is, yeah, we might be using as end users the reports, but we might be able to go now back to the employees that produce the information and give them insights as to shortcuts and more efficient ways of doing the work. And all of this turns out to be profitability. The more quickly they can do the work, the more efficient they are, the more profitable will be. Now, as it relates to your business, I just want to jump back into some personal things. You started the business. How's that been a game changer for you as an individual? Just going out on your own, being an entrepreneur, starting the company, and providing these types of trainings. How's that changed your life?
Yeah. Sorry, I want to answer that, but just something you caught me when you were talking about, you as the owner and having your staff and the profitability.
Oh yeah.
There's a CPA firm, and there was an owner, CPA, and he goes, Jeff, I don't even want any more clients because my staff are so maxed out. If I got another client, I couldn't give them the level of service that I would want to provide. So I don't take on any new clients. And so I was able to work with the staff and automate so many of their workbooks and so many of their monthly, reporting packages that they would deliver, that now they're like, okay, you've got this down from like 40 hours per client to 4 hours per client per month. So now he was able to sell more work and get new clients. And so that was an amazing success story. So I just wanted to talk about that before it slipped out of my memory.
Well, no, I'm glad you said that because that is the illustration of what I was trying to point out. I think as business owners, we're running our accounting firms believing that we're, being productive because they are producing the reports. But at the end of the day, we're not doing the day-to-day data entry, the generating the reports. So we're too removed from the actual process. But if we could give our employees some training and some help, I'm sure there's tasks that they're performing that can be done much more efficiently. And being done efficiently helps us be more profitable. So you said it far better than I did, but that's what I was trying to point across. So thank you for pointing that out.
All right, awesome. So then you asked a question about, how is it impacting my personal life in terms of having this business?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
business owner to business owner, that's who's listening to the show. I mean, we're out there trying to grow our companies, and here you are as an entrepreneur starting your business. I'm curious how it's changed your life.
Okay, I'll tell you, it's this. When I was doing traditional accounting work and there's these deadlines, there's this built up like stress of meeting the deadlines. But I learned how to automate a lot of those processes, and I carried that into running this business. So beyond automating within Excel, there's so many other tools that can help us automate things. So because of that, my whole platform is basically fully automated. So my schedule is very flexible, and there is no stress. There's no late nights. There's no weekends. So as an example, this process of attracting, potential students who might be able to benefit, that's mostly automated. Getting them into my mail system, that's automated. Nurturing them and providing them free Excel tips so that they can learn Excel and see value in what it would mean, what it would look like to learn Excel, is automated. Inviting to the webinar is automated. The webinar is automated. And then when they purchase, that's automated. Taking the classes is automated. Taking the certificate of completion is automated. The quiz grading is automated. So by really having this overall mindset of it's all about efficiency has helped me create this business that is very dialed in and very efficient.
I love it. Very, very good. So on a personal note, you've started the business, it's going well. You've automated, as you just explained. How's it changed your life?
It's changed my life by providing more security and more flexibility. So, I'm not commuting. I work from home, so I'm not commuting. So I save a lot of time, there, and it's just overall, I don't know, just less stress. That's what I would say. Less stress and more flexibility, more ability to travel, spend time with my wife and family, and do the things that we're interested in doing, mountain biking, traveling, stuff like that.
How supportive has your wife been in this process, and how has that support enabled you to do what you've done?
She's been an incredible partner in this whole journey because she handles the set of tasks that she handles, and I handle the set of tasks that I handle. So it really lets me just focus on doing the best job at running the business as possible. And so she's definitely been very encouraging, very supportive, and just a rock. And honestly, I couldn't do it without her doing the supportive stuff that she does for her work as well.
I love it. The idea of starting a business can be very challenging, and to have the support of a spouse is, I think, one of the things that comes up regularly in the conversations that I have. Just to have that support network, whether it's family or friends, that actually can help bolster us through those challenging times is, in my opinion, a game changer. So I appreciate you sharing that. What's something you're grateful for?
I'm grateful for. I'm going to go with my family, my church, all the blessings that I have in my life, and just the ability to live in this country that gives me this kind of opportunity to impact the world from my little office here in the middle of the United States.
I love it. We do live in a great country. And although I do have international listeners, there's something to be said for the freedoms that we share wherever it is that we are, especially from a business point of view. Anytime that we live in an economy where we can actually start and build successful businesses, it's very liberating and very rewarding. So that's great. You brought up faith, your church. How has faith helped you with your business?
Um, I would say it provides this foundation of integrity, and just honesty, and how to treat people, that has helped my reputation, and has helped just the quality of work that I've been able to achieve through that. So that's been very important.
That is beautiful. The two words, honesty and integrity, I think that does bleed through from someone who is faith based. It does actually fall into the business world where you're able to say, I've got a conscience. I know that I'm going to be held accountable for some things. So I better be very honest with my dealings as it relates to my fellow man. So I appreciate that as well. Well, Jeff, I think what we've done here is really done a great job of not only showing how in the world of accounting, how Excel still is relevant and can be very, very helpful in working efficiently. I think also at the same time, from a business point of view, you've been able to exemplify that family is very important. The idea of faith is very helpful. So you really hit on a number of great things. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of wrap some things up here and kind of hit on a few of the highlights that I felt that we've addressed, but at the same time share one of the things that I think all my listeners should take advantage of. Jeff has been very kind to actually put together for us something that you'd want to take advantage of. It's a free Excel weekly tip newsletter that you can sign up for, as well as take advantage of one of his classes for free. So to do this, you want to go to the episode description, and there in the episode description, you'll find the information you need to act now and take advantage of this opportunity. So definitely do so. I highly recommend it, simply because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm always still learning things that just wow me as it relates to Excel. So I'm eager to find out what more I can learn. With that in mind, I just want to kind of recap a few things. One, I appreciated his story at the beginning, showing that once again, as we each go through our career paths and reflect on what got us to where we are, it's sometimes unintentional. And just from that invite at college to say, let's go join this, it really evolved into the point now, not only that Jeff's a CPA, but now he's actually running a successful school for Excel. And I appreciate him sharing that part of it, because that's a thing that we need to recognize, that sometimes in life we just need to make choices and decisions. And in doing so, we can typically find that it affects our career paths. The other thing that I thought was helpful is, as we dove into Excel, is we were easily able to point out that there are a variety of things that are very important, but he shared three of which. The pool of the data, that automation is very, very key, and going all the way then to having the pivot tables. We talked about charts, having the ability to properly illustrate the data that we're getting. Love that part of the conversation. I really appreciated the fact that we brought AI into the conversation to say, okay, how can we utilize that? He was explaining that you can ask the AI to explain the formulas and the functions, what's really happening there. And I think that's a great way to do it. I know that sometimes I'm either confused on how to write the function, or more importantly, what is the function doing, that I've received from someone else. And that's a great place for me to go to get that clarification. The other thing that I thought was helpful were the different kind of like best practices as it related to Excel, just some of the things that I can do. And at the end, realizing that I can, with my staff, maybe train them to become a lot more efficient. His illustration of a firm going from 40 hours to 4 hours was a great example of that. The one thing that I do want to point out is obviously his personal nature, the fact that he was able to share that with his spouse, he's got the support that he needs to be successful. And I am grateful for that. I think that's something that we all need to be reminded. And then bringing into it the great country in which we live and the freedoms that we have here, but at the same time, the faith that he has that enables him to be a little bit more conscientious, honest, and have integrity as he works with his fellow man. So beautiful talking points that we had in our conversation today. So let me come back to you, Jeff. What closing thought would you have for our conversation today?
Yeah, that's a great recap, by the way. I don't know how you were able to keep track of that whole conversation, but that's right. I would say some inspirational words would be this: be lazy. And what I mean by that is, try to get Excel to get your work done so that you don't have to. And that's how you're going to be driven to save time and be more efficient.
Done. I want to be lazy. So that's excellent. I appreciate that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap this up, first of all, by thanking all of my listeners. Appreciate you being on the show today. And for that reason, I want to encourage you, if you haven't already, to subscribe to the podcast. Definitely subscribe, set your notifications, and listen each and every week as we release various episodes to help you work on your business to offer quality accounting services get paid what you're worth, becoming the premier accounting firm in your area. Now, in addition to that, I also want to say that we have at universalaccounting.com a compilation of highlights of the various episodes that we've had over the years. We're now pushing 300 episodes, and in that we've gone through and collected some of those that I've found to be perhaps kind of the best of the best. And for that, we have playlists. We've organized them based on marketing, selling, pricing, tech stacks, just a variety of topical things that you can actually use based on your needs as it's related to running the business today. So if you have a particular thing that you'd like to dive deep into and hear what the experts are saying specifically about that topic, go to universalaccounting.com, go to the podcast section in the navigation, and there you'll find the highlights. It's there that the playlist exists for you to binge listen. Also, I want to invite you to GrowCon. GrowCon is an annual conference for owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses. As a conference, it's here that we actually have on the stage the experts to teach us what we need to be doing to run our businesses and be more effective in the marketing that we're doing to grow the firm, in offering quality services as to how we can be doing this to take care of our clients and retain them, and ultimately how to work more efficiently and profitably so that we can have a business that we can be proud of, ultimately building an asset that we can eventually retire from. Now, all of that being said, that is at GrowCon. So join us for it. You can also meet your peers there, those individuals that are likewise working on their business. Find out who they are, build friendships, collaborate with them, take care of your clients with mutual services. It's a great place to actually build your business and make some good connections. Also, you get to meet the team at Universal Accounting, those individuals on my staff that are committed to actually helping you be in business for yourself, but not by yourself with Universal Accounting. So come join us, register now if you haven't already, and join us for GrowCon. Now, the next thing I want to point out is if you have any questions regarding these topics and more, I want you to actually visit us at universalaccountingschool.com. It's there that we talk about these various principles and can help you run and operate a successful business, or you can just give us a phone call. You can call us at 801-265-3777. And always remember this, if it's about accounting, it is Universal. Take care, have a great day, and be safe out there. Jeff, that was awesome.
That was awesome. I appreciate this interaction that we had. It's different than some other podcasts I've done. So this was so fun. Thank you so much for your approach.
You're very, very welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So what I'd like you to do now is that little promo piece that I put in the chat.
Okay. Do you just the first name?
Yeah, you can use your last name too, Jeff Lenning.
Okay.
And you can use more than one adjective too. I give you that permission.
Okay. This is Jeff Lenning with Excel University, and it was so enlightening to have a conversation with Roger in an episode of Building the Premier Accounting Firm. We discussed Excel, we discussed some tips, we discussed some tricks, and some overall best practices for using Excel and some features that are designed to save you a ton of time. So I'd invite